Hello, this is Ken Ward here for another edition of Plain Talk here on Eagle Eye TV. This week we'll be talking to two members of the Alabama legislature who just happen to be Auburn grads, one Democrat and one Republican. We're joined first by Representative Joe Lovvorn from here in Auburn, who is a Republican who currently is serving in House District 79. Thank you, Representative Lovvorn, for joining us.
Well, thank you for having me, Ken.
My first question is, you took over after former House Speaker Mike Hubbard was convicted of several felony counts of public corruption. How have you worked to try to bring confidence and character back to District 79?
Well, with everything the people of our district went through for a couple of years of trials and then the eventual removal from office, I've tried to focus on healing with our district, because our district went from the #1 position in the House of Representatives to the 105th position overnight. And so I've been trying to build bridges down there and try to regain some of the clout, if you will, to make sure that our district is remembered and taken care of when it comes to budget time, to policy procedures. And I tell people over there, my job is to worry about the future. The legal system is taking care of the past, and I've just focused on the future with all my conversations and within any legislation I've dealt with.
The 2018 House Republican Caucus's legislative priorities have been coined the Flag, Family, and Country agenda. Can you explain some of the key priorities of this agenda?
Well, the reason for that agenda was with a lot of things going on and divide in this nation, it's a lot revolving around standing up for pride and American pride issues. And so I think the purpose of this caucus agenda is to remind people it's okay to be proud of where you are. It's okay to be proud of where you stand and poke your chest out and be proud to be an American and be proud to be an Alabamian. And then we work on our differences. Our differences shouldn't divide us when it comes to being proud of where we're raising our families, where we work, and where we choose to live our lives. And through Veterans Affairs, we've made it a standardized where veterans are allowed free into our state parks. And that's a good person to have in our state parks. They're good people that understand and believe in serving this country. They're going to take care of things. So having them there and bringing their families to the park, we want to make sure we're encouraging. We've done tax breaks for companies that will hire veterans, employ veterans throughout the state. You know, we are a heavily military state, meaning we've got several key bases in this state that play a vital role in defense of this nation. And there's also, with that comes jobs created by having that stronghold. And so we want to make sure people that serve time in Alabama think of when their time of service is over, Alabama is a place I would like to live and raise my family and live out my retirement years. And then in turn, we get a huge return on our investment.
You were talking about some quality of life things of that nature. Education is a big factor in that. I know Auburn and Lee County is a big education area. Can you describe a little bit? I know you serve on some of the education committees in the House. Can you describe talk a little bit about that as well?
Well, to me, education is our #1 priority in this state. It's like planting seeds. I often tell people the old saying, the best time to plant a tree is 25 years ago. The second best time is today. So if we can continue planting those seeds today in education, starting with our pre-K program that we funded this year, another $20 million to expand. And we've got the highest higher ed budget allotment in years. Every regional, every higher ed in the state has gotten an increase. And we've gotten a raise to our teachers to make sure they're adequately paid as much as possible. I wish we'd give them more of a raise, but we can't. We're going to give them a responsible raise that we can afford. And when I was elected, I knew that education was a priority for our district. It was a priority for our state. And so I worked from the moment I was elected to build a relationship with the Speaker of House, Matt McCutcheon, to make it a priority for our district, and the importance of, we've been through a lot with my predecessor's trial and removal of office. We needed a victory for our district, and a victory for our district would be a position on the Education Ways and Means Committee, which allocates $6.7 billion a year for education every year. And I advised that to Speaker McCutcheon. He said, that is a big ask, Joe. And I told him, here's 20 reasons why. And I gave him a list of why it's important for Auburn and the representative representing Auburn to have a seat at that table. And I tell you, that being part of that committee, knowing where the money's going in this state for education and seeing and helping prioritize in a responsible spending way has been one of the highlights of being able to serve in the legislature.
During in recent days, we've seen a lot of attention on guns and things of that nature. One of your colleagues and a candidate for Lieutenant Governor, Representative Will Ainsworth, has introduced some legislation that would allow for teachers in the state of Alabama to be armed. This is something that President Trump has also proposed after the Florida school shooting. Do you see this as a possible solution to some of the school violence we've seen, especially here in our state?
Well, when it comes to our children's safety, I feel all subjects should be on the table. It's not a partisan issue. The safety is an issue for all of us. And I've seen the basics of his bill, and we all have had teachers that probably should not have a gun. We've had some that should be able to have a gun. But in working in public safety for 21 years in this community, you don't want to create a new problem by trying to solve an old problem. And I look forward to working with our education community and law enforcement to say, what do you need from us? How can we make our schools safer? What's your suggestion? Because we're the conduit for the funding, we're the conduit for some of the policies that would allow them to do that. And I'm not sure what the answer is. I think we're all going to work. There's going to be a mixture of suggestions brought together and ideas to try to make our children safe. I drop a 9 and 10-year-old off every morning into a public school, and it's on my mind, are they safe today? And we are very fortunate in our community. We have a strong school resource officer program. We have some strong security steps in place, but could always be improved. But I think the answer is working with our education system and our law enforcement community, get the ideas and pull those together for what's the best solution.
We talked about this a little bit earlier when we were discussing education, but Alabama's budgets have improved this year. Everybody can see that with Medicaid actually asking for less funding than they have in the past instead of asking for increased funding. But given the fact that the general fund always seems to be struggling over the years, do you think these struggles are behind us now, or do you think our state still needs to do some work in order to rein in our purse strings or to find additional revenue?
There's always room where there's going to be some level of waste in government. And there's still some areas we can rein in. A lot has been done in the past decade to really rein those in, but there's still some work to do. But there are also some agencies that are running as tight as they can and probably need a little additional funding. Now, we have formed a bipartisan joint committee with the House and Senate for budget reform. And in that budget reform committee, they are pulling resources from every group that receives state funding and says, where do you get your local funding? What kind of national funding do you get? What are your expenditures? And so that when we make decisions on a global scale for budgeting, we're making logical decisions. I was taught to budget on a family farm, and we sat at a table similar to this and would lay out our goals for the year and what it's going to take to get there. And that's what we're trying to do, is lay out our goals of where we want to be in Alabama and how we're going to be able to get there. Now, the general fund budget and the education budget has benefited by a booming economy. And the best way to fix a budget shortfall is to continue to provide jobs, keep unemployment at record lows, and make the money go to the persons that are out there in the community working every day. And that will in turn, Alabama will get a return on that investment through the income taxes they pay, the job creation through it, and the economic development drives both budgets. And I think we're realizing now some of those gains, and I hope we get to realize them for several years.
Given the recent federal tax cuts, do you think those will end up impacting Alabama's budget favorably?
I think they will impact us favorably because it's going to put more money in your pockets, and you will in turn spend that money the way you want to and hopefully spend it in Alabama in ways that will turn back into the economy. It's opened up gateways for our companies to do expansions, creating more jobs, and I think there's just a trickle-down effect. Now, there's always some divisors that people will find in any budget, but when you're opening a path for people to make their own success, I think we're on the right track.
As a member of the House, what do you see as the biggest challenge facing the legislature this session, especially within the House of Representatives?
I feel that this legislative session is going to be shortened because we've got the budgets, and that's the #1 priority this year. But in the background of the entire discussion, we've got a mental health crisis, in my mind, brewing in this state, and we've got our prison reform, we've got opioid crisis that's out there, and a lot of that's tied in together. But when I talked earlier about planting those seeds, do you know how they measure how much prison rooms they're going to need in the future? They take 3rd grade reading levels and evaluate where they are, and that dictates the pathway that most likely those children in that age will take, and they schedule it. So if we can improve those reading levels, improve the opportunity for the children coming up today, and those that are entering the workforce today, and those that are trying to provide for families today, if we can focus on the opportunity, we can fix a lot of those other issues. We have got to spend some money on our prison system to improve them. The federal government's already dictating that. I've toured several of our prisons to get an understanding for the people I represent. If we're going to have to spend $1 billion, here's how and why. But the overlying issue is, to me, is the mental health issues we have in this state that need to be properly addressed and properly diagnosed to address. And I think that we're going to have several bills that already have dealt with that and the opioids mixed together, and I look forward to addressing it more fluid.
Speaking about the opioids specifically, we've seen several states in recent, and local municipalities as well in recent months, start to sue some of the major pharmacy companies that were responsible for some of these opioid medications. Do you see this as a possible solution to at least the funding challenge of the opioid crisis here in our state?
Well, the manufacturers is just providing a demand that's created out there. There's several layers to that onion need to be peeled back. It's from the prescriber, it's from the person asking for those prescriptions, and it's us as parents that are overseeing youth that are abusing it and being more responsible with our own medication. And people coming out of a down economy, now they didn't have a gateway towards a future, and providing that opportunity hopefully will steer some of those people away from that process and will help them with their addiction issues. But I don't know that just suing the companies. I think trying to create alternatives to the medicines is a better route. There's several different layers that needs to be addressed. And working in public safety, I know it's not just your down and rotten neighborhoods, it's not your redeveloping areas, it's the best neighborhoods in your community is where those opioid addictions are, not just one specific. It doesn't have a tax bracket, it doesn't have a race, it doesn't have a gender, it hits all of us, and we all have got to look at it to find some realize some true solutions. So I don't know what those are. I think it's several facets to it, and to all come at the crisis from different directions.
And then my final question, as an Auburn University graduate, how did your experience here on Auburn's campus help you in your current role as a state legislature and a state leader?
I tell you, Auburn University's campus is one where we even have a day dedicated to Hay Day where you're greeting people. This is a community where you still wave at each other when you meet in the road. You speak when you're walking through a hallway, and people say, when did you start campaigning for office? Well, when I moved here in 1994, I felt like I did. I got involved with my community and found ways to serve my community, and this community opened up and gave opportunities for people like me to do that. I tell you, the education here, the level of research that's being done here today, the bar continues to be raised. I'm happy I was able to get in Auburn when I did, because it's your age group is certainly excelling all expectations, and the warmth that you have here. When I served with 105 other legislators, the legislators, they all brag on how kind and nice the Auburn community is. And when you can have a great platform for education mixed with a great commonality of interaction with the people, no matter what your viewpoints are or opinions, we're all people at the end of the day. And I'm glad to say that my alma mater is still living that today, War Eagle.
Well, thank you so much, Representative Lovvorn, for joining us on this week's edition of Plain Talk. And thank you so much for your service to our community.
Oh, thank you, Ken.
And we'll be right back with Representative Elaine Beech, who is a Democrat and also an Auburn graduate, here on Plain Talk here on Eagle Eye TV. Thank you.
Fans, direct your attention to the flagpole for a special presentation.
You never really leave Auburn, because Auburn never leaves you.
So, I just moved in with this family, and it's embarrassing. The little one, he likes to go outside and crawl around in the giant litter box. I don't know what he's doing. I mean, I was born and I knew how to use the litter box. Look at that! That's disgusting! Oh, poop already! You're making me nervous. Oh, okay, I can't look at this anymore. I really hope he grows out of this, for his sake.
I hope that you've been able to learn a strong work ethic surrounded by character, integrity, perseverance, so that when your 1 second comes, you'll be prepared for it.
Chris Davis.
45, there goes Davis!
Your 1 second, our 1 second is now. And our lives have been guided by the principles of one of the greatest academic institutions in the country, Auburn University.
Hello and welcome back to Plain Talk here on Eagle Eye TV. I'm your host, Ken Ward, and today, like we said earlier, we're joined by two state legislators who happen to be Auburn graduates. We have one Democrat and one Republican. We talked a little bit earlier with Republican Joe Lovvorn from here in Auburn, and today we're glad to welcome Democrat Elaine Beech from Chatham, Alabama. Thank you so much, Representative Beech, for joining us.
Nice to be here, Ken. Thank you for having me.
My first question is that you've served in the legislature now for a little over almost 10 years now. As a Democrat in a majority Republican state, has it been hard for your party to get things accomplished in the legislature?
I would say for the party itself it has, but for me personally, I've never had any problems. I'm a person that believes you need to work across the lines, and I'm a moderate in most. I'm not liberal, and I'm not over conservative, but I try to stay in the middle and able to work, so I can work with each side of the aisle to get legislation passed, and that's the only way you're going to do it. And some things are just out of the realm of trying to pass, and I try to pass bills that are just easy to pass. I just don't argue with people, and I try to let them see my point and go from there.
And a lot of times we see on the national conversation in politics, we see it being very polarized with people from both sides not really wanting to work together. I know we talked a little bit earlier with Representative Lovvorn, and he and you both off camera had talked about how y'all like to have a pretty good working relationship in the legislature. Can you talk a little bit about working with in a bipartisan fashion?
Well, first of all, you need to be friends. And I think people realize who you are by the way you act. And I feel like that I try to act as a good person. And I don't take things on my chest, and I don't feel like they're on my back, and I don't have hard feelings. If you vote against something, you vote against it. It's a bill and it's gone. Don't hold hard feelings. There are people in Montgomery that if you vote against their bill, they're going to come down and filibuster every bill you have and everything about it. That's not the way to do. You'll never get anything worked out that way. I try to work among the people, and I try to get my differences hashed out before I go on the floor to pass the bill. And I think that's the way everybody should do, And I clash with my own party on some issues, but I think I can work with them, and I usually go to those people that I know that's going to have a problem and discuss it with them before it comes on the floor, and then usually I have bills passed. This year I've had 3 bills passed. They were passed unanimously.
The 2018 House Democratic Caucus's legislative priorities have been coined the Clean, Competent, and Competitive Alabama. Could you explain some of the key priorities of the House Democratic Caucus this session?
Well, we have all, I think the whole House, but we always put public education out front. Health care is an issue in which, me being a pharmacist, I can help them with the health care issues. The Medicaid expansion has been a key topic, but I think we've missed the boat on that. And I was kind of one of those that really didn't know if we should expand Medicaid, because at that point in time we were having trouble funding what we had. Health care is at the top, public education, and we're going to work on some opioid addiction. I happen to be on the governor's task force for that. So we're working toward that. There are some other issues. We're also want to see jobs brought to Alabama, so we're working with economic development real closely. And we're trying to be a transparent party. We want everybody to know what's going on, and we're having up-to-date press conferences and things like that so people can see what's really happening with our party and the state.
We had Mayor Walt Maddox, who's many consider as the front runner for your party's nomination for governor this upcoming year. He was talking about how he wants to separate himself as an individual candidate, not as being a part of like a national party or anything like that, but he does admit that he is a Democrat. Can you describe a little bit about how the local Alabama Democratic Party tries to distance itself or go with itself from the national party?
I may catch some flack from this. Our state party is not working as well as it should now. We've got to get some things going on that level. I'm sort of like Walt. I want to be a party for Alabama, a person for Alabama. You know, there's things that I don't agree with on my party or the Republican Party, but I want to work for the people of Alabama, the middle-class people of Alabama, help the people that can't help themselves. But I feel like I'm fiscally conservative. You know, I hate to see new taxes, but I know things have to be funded in a way to take care of everything we should. And it is funny, I think things go in phases. I'm not sure how long it was easier to work when the House was closer divided than it is with a supermajority, and I think they see the same thing because they have a division in their supermajority sometimes. Mm-hmm. I don't know if that really answered your question, but...
Oh, it perfectly did. Okay. You talked a little bit about the Medicaid expansion that Alabama eventually did not go forward with, and then you also talked about your role as a former pharmacist over in South Alabama. The Medicaid has been really a big hot topic political issue in our state for many years, especially in regard to how the general fund is funding Medicaid. Governor Ivey recently, we talked with her a little bit about the failed RCO program that was very anticipated, but ended up receiving some flack from some of the local healthcare leaders, including some major hospitals in the state. Could you describe a little bit about that?
Well, the RCOs, that was a very difficult plan. Now, pharmacy had been carved out of it. And the RCOs were supposed to be that the money would follow the person, and they would go to one doctor, one pharmacist, one hospital, blah, blah, blah. To me, that would have been a really good plan because you do see people on Medicaid, I don't say doctor shopping, but they go to where it's convenient. But then one doctor does not know what the other doctor has prescribed, especially if they go to two different pharmacies. As long as the people go to the same pharmacy, you know what they're taking. You can see the interactions. You can later call the doctors and say, look, these two are contraindicated with each other, or you're giving them the same thing for the same drug for the same disease state. There's a lot of things like that. I think it would have been good because there would have been a home health type nurse that could oversee the elderly, especially with their medication, to make sure they didn't take what they weren't supposed to and they weren't over-medicating. That I saw was a good point. But then it was going to go per capita, and then some of these people, it would have cost a lot more money than it would others. And I guess that was the balancing out of the way the RCOs were going to work. I'm not sure our implementation was ever, I don't think the process was done correctly, and I don't want to start blaming anyone. But I just didn't see it as a way to work for Alabama. At first it sounded good, And they just drug their feet, I think, in doing so. And like I said, I don't want to blame anybody on that, but I saw some loopholes and some problems to begin with. And, you know, the way it was cut off, some of these people had invested a lot of money into implementation of the RCOs, and then they're out that money. And I'm on the general fund budget, so I was really watching the dollars, and I'm still watching the dollars. I haven't gotten any answers on where the dollars went, so I'm still digging.
The general fund budget this year is a little bit in better shape than it has been in the past. On the topic of Medicaid, the Medicaid agency is actually not requesting as much money as they have in the past. What do you think is the reasoning behind the general fund being a little bit better this year? And then do you think it will be able to stay that way, or do you think Alabama is going to have to eventually find new revenue sources for that budget?
Well, this could be a twofold question, sort of. I think with the leadership, we have been, like I said, fiscally conservative on what we spent. With Medicaid, we put about $100 million into those RCOs. However, I was told only $16 million was spent. So my question was, I've kind of alluded to what I said a while ago, where's that $84 million? Maybe they're using that, and that's why they didn't have to ask for more money, but my opinion is they should have given us the 84 back and then let us go on from there. I don't know the answer to that. I'm not sure that they can even give me that answer. But we did cut some things with Medicaid, and maybe Alabama's getting healthier. I don't know how that could be, but you know, 50% of the people that are on Medicaid are children, but they only take up about 20% of the funding because they're not sick. And if we can keep people healthy, then they don't use as much of the money. And most of the Medicaid dollars go to the elderly in the nursing homes, and we're living longer. But I think we've done a good job of squeezing our dollar till it squeaks, I guess you would say. The Medicaid budget and prison budget take up about 60% of our general fund budget. Of course, you know, we're under a court order to take care of our prison issue, and that goes into mental health and many other things. We're going to have to do something with the mental health issue in the state of Alabama, and I think we're going to address some of it in our budget this year. But I would say that our Chairman Klaus has been, and Chairman Orr Pittman, they swapped up one year, have done a good job of budgeting in the general fund, and I think we all have worked to try to shore up some things.
As a Democrat in a traditionally red state, I know you said you try to stay as more fiscally conservative on some issues and things like that. In recent weeks after the Florida shooting, people from the National Democratic Party have criticized the NRA. According to your bio, you're an NRA member, and I'm guessing as an NRA member, you're a supporter of the Second Amendment. What's kind of your opinion on some of these proposals from the national leaders about limiting gun ownership and instituting some gun restrictions?
Well, you know, and like I said, I am an NRA member, and I would say I'm a pistol packing mama. I have one in my car, but I don't put it in my purse. You know, I think you ought to have the right to defend yourself and your family. The deal with the AK-15s, 25s, whatever they are, I don't see them. And I come from a hunting family. They hunt. We have rifles and we have shotguns. My son actually had one of those one time, but anyway, he got rid of that. But I don't see the purpose, really the need for those. But that's, you know, gun collectors collect them, so I'm not going to get into that with them. I don't see giving everybody a gun as an answer to saving the issues. You know, once again, the incident in Florida, that person undoubtedly had shown mental illness signs over the years. Once again, don't we need to take care of that issue? That's really a hard question to decide, but coming from the background that I have, and I feel like that, you know, we all need to be able to defend ourselves. And, you know, if they took them away, I would be the first one to protest it because, you know, I just believe you should have it because, like I said, for the hunting purposes, my son is a big hunter. My late husband was, my late father was, my whole family is. So, you know, there's no way that I could say take guns away from everybody, but I don't feel like everybody needs a gun. And that's kind of an odd answer, but I guess did I answer like you wanted me to? Mm-hmm. Like you wanted?
The Democratic Party in the state legislature has in the past been a big proponent of the lottery, which according to polls, many of Alabamians would like to see at least the opportunity to vote on it. What's kind of your opinion on a possible lottery in the coming years?
Excuse me, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
I know Speaker McCutcheon has said it probably won't be passing this session, especially since it's an election session, but do you ever see that coming down the road?
Well, I see many people, that stop me, and I consider myself to live in the Bible Belt. And when I have a deacon of a Baptist church come to tell me that he thinks it's time we vote on it, I think it's time we vote on it. And I've always said I think the people should have the right to vote on it. I can't stand the thought of all our money going to the surrounding states. I think we need to bring it back to Alabama and use it for Alabama. I think if we ever have a lottery bill, we're going to have to put it toward education because it was proposed to do it to fund Medicaid and prisons. Nobody was going to vote for that. They would not do that, but they would do it if it funded education. So I think it's time that we look at our two budgets and try to decide what we could move back over to the general fund if we could get the lottery for education. And I think it's a really good thing, just like Georgia does. I think we're going to need it sooner or later. But we need to work it out, and we don't need to get so many people with these special interest groups telling us how to do it. We need to sit down and get a logical way to do it before it's ever done. And I tell people that are against the lottery, I said, how many times have you bought a chance on a quilt? It's really not any difference. It's a game of chance. So, if you're going to stop it all, stop it all. But I think it's coming, and I think it's something that's going to have to. Nobody will raise taxes in Alabama, so we've got to come up with a way to do some other funding.
During your tenure in the legislature, you've been a big proponent of higher education funding. The past education trust fund budget that passed unanimously through the House had a pretty sizable increase for higher education funding. Could you describe a little bit about why you're a supporter of higher education funding in Alabama?
Well, for starters, I love Auburn, and that's part of it, And I think. I know that we're seeing a trend for kids to go to two-year colleges and to go to technical training, and yes, we do need money for that. But the ones that do go to higher education, we need it for the research, for the things that come down the road. I'm on the Unmanned Vehicle Study Commission, and I see this out at Auburn. I went and watched the trucks platooning and things like that, and we need stuff. We need money for research, things like that. Farms, we need it in the farming system to research agriculture and things like that, and many things that affect everyone. I think I see it more as a research tool. In pharmacy, in medicine, we need it to find new drugs to cure these dreaded cancers and things like that we have. There's just many things in research I see that it's very good. I know all of us had to pay tuition, and tuition has been on the rise. But the more we can fund to help that, the lower our tuition is for especially our in-state kids. And I just think we need to look for them. I know, like I said, there's only a small percentage that's going to higher ed now, but I still think the research end of it is a very important thing, and I think Auburn does a great job with research.
What do you see as the biggest challenge facing the legislature this session, especially within the House, since that's where you serve?
I would say we always have a challenge with the budgets. And, we've passed the education budget out, and I think it was a pretty good budget. In the general fund, our state employees have not seen a raise in like 10 years. And that's just kind of ludicrous to me. I really would love to see them get a raise. And going back to the prisons, I toured the prisons about 4 years ago, and it appalled me. And it's not so much for the prisoners, but for the guards that are in there. And those people are not being paid very much money to risk their lives every day. So I would like to be able to do things like that. There's just other things that we can fund in this state. And I think the budgets are always a big challenge for us. This year, and with opioid addiction, that's a huge problem nationwide. And it tends to go back to the mental health situation. We need funding for that. And there's always problems with the funding situation, but I think we're seeing a little bit more because it's all bleeding into another area that you don't even really consider part of the general fund. And but it is. And so that's some of my issues that I have.
And then my final question, as an Auburn University graduate, how did your Auburn experience help you in your current role as a legislature?
Well, Auburn, you become another family at Auburn. And I think the relationships you build at Auburn, they go with you for life. I have people now talking to me, they said, well, we can't vote for you, but can we come down to your district and help campaign for you? I said, sure. So you make lifelong friends who in turn give you advice, and you meet so many people that you see different roles that influence you. I'll never forget something my father said when he left me on the steps of Dorm K, the summer of 1978. He said, now you're going to learn a lot from books, but you're going to learn a lot more from the people you meet here at Auburn. And he said that will go with you a lot longer than those books. And he was right, because I see people every day that influence me on my decisions, and you know, we talk about things not that they influence me how to vote, but they give me advice. And you know, I have so many people that I can call from all walks of life when I don't understand a question or understand what's going on, and ask them, and they're able to help me. Of course, I'm a very outgoing person, and I guess my days at Auburn, you know, I could talk to anybody, and I guess that's how I got here. I really wasn't involved in a lot of different things, because in pharmacy we had to study a lot, so I didn't get a lot of, but there were still interactions, you know. So, but anyway, I think that's it. The friendships you make, you know, they influence you with your decisions you make.
Well, thank you so much, Representative Beech, for joining us, and thank you so much for your service to our state. And thank you for joining us as well for this edition of Plain Talk. Be sure to join us next Monday for another in-depth conversation with one of our local community leaders. Thank you so much, and have a great week.